The goat or domestic goat is a domesticated species of goat antelope, typically kept as livestock. It was domesticated from the wild goat of Southwest Asia and Eastern Europe. The goat is a member of the animal family Bovidae and the tribe Caprinae, meaning it is closely related to the sheep. There are over 300 distinct breeds of goat. बकरियों को दुनिया भर में दूध, गोश्त, खाल और खालों के लिए इस्तेमाल किया जाता है। बकरियों का दूध अक्सर बकरी के पनीर में बदल जाता है। Goats have been used for milk, meat, fur and skins across much of the world. Milk from goats is often turned into goat cheese. In 2011, there were more than 924 million goats living in the world, according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. So, a goat is a domestic and a very useful animal. From a very long time, it was tamed by humans. It is found in almost all parts of the world. The goat is a member of Bovidae family, which includes bison, African buffalo, water buffalo, and sheep etc. Goat is a very useful and popular animal in all around the world, and especially in Asia and Eastern Europe. It is very much useful during its life and also useful after its death. We get milk from the goat, which is very nutritious. Goat skin is used for make leather goods, and horns are used to make buttons. Goat farming is a good business and it gives profit to many people because they tame a large number of goats, and when they are grown, they start selling them. Goats also have importance in many religions. It is used in many rituals in Hinduism and Islamic religion. So, if we will talk about the history of goats are among the earliest animal domesticated by human. The most recent genetic analysis confirm the archaeological evidence that the wild bezoar ibex of the Zagros Mountains is the likely original ancestor of probably all domestic goats today. Neolithic farmers began to herd wild goats primarily for easy access to milk and meat, as well as to their dung, which has used as fuel, and their bones, hair, and sinew were used for clothing, building, and tools. The earliest remnants of domesticated goats dating 10,000 years before present are found in Ganj Dera in Iran. Goat remains have been found as archaeological sites in Jericho, Chogamem, Siano, dating the domesticating of goats in Western Asia at between 8,000 and 9,000 years ago. Studies of DNA evidence suggest that 10,000 years ago as the domestication date. So, यानी बकरी को पालना घरों में शुरू किया गया वो 10,000 साल पहले, यानी ये DNA टेस्ट और स्टडी ये बताती है. Historically, goat hide has been used for water and wine bottles in both traveling and transporting wine for sale. It has also been used to produce parchment. Parchment is a writing material made from special prepared untanned skins of animal, primarily sheep, calves and goat. It has been used as a writing medium for over 2 millennia. Vellum is a finer quality parchment made from the skin of young animals such as lambs, goats, etc. So if we will talk about the horns of goat. Most goats naturally have two horns of various shapes and sizes depending on the breed. There have been incidents of polycyrate goats having as many as 8 horns, although this is a genetic rarity thought to be inherited. Unlike cattle, goats have not been successfully bred to be reliable polled, as the genes determining sex and those determining horns are closely linked. Breeding together two genetically polled goats result in a high number of intersex individuals among the offspring, which are typically sterile. Their horns are made of living bone surrounded by keratin and other proteins and are used for defense, dominance, and territoriality. If we will talk कि जो इसका हाजमे का निज़ामी निज़ाम होता है बकरी का, अगर हम उसके बारे में बात करें तो goats are ruminants. They have a 4-chambered stomach consisting of the rumen, the reticulum, the omasum, and the abomasum, as which other mammal ruminants. They are even toed ungulates. The females have an odor consisting of 2 teats in contrast of the cattle, which have 4 teats. An exception to this is the boar goat, which sometimes may have up to 8 teats. And अगर इसकी आंखों की बात की जाए बकरी की तो goats have horizontal slit-shaped pupil because irises are usually pale. Their contrasting pupils are much more noticeable than in animals such as cattle, such as deer, यानी जिस तरह हरन के होते हैं, horses के होते हैं, sheep के होते हैं, इस तरह इनकी eyes में भी एक खास वो attraction है. Animals such as cattle, deer, most horses and many sheep, whose similarity horizontal pupils blend into a dark iris. So, if we will talk about the beard, some of the goats also have beards. Both male and female goats may have beard, and many types of goat, most commonly dairy goats, dairy cross boars, and may have wattles, one dangling from each side of the neck. Maybe you have seen all those goats. Goats expressing the 10 pattern have coats pigmented completely with phenylalanine. The early which codes for this pattern is located at the locus of the goat genome. It is completely dominant to all other alleles at this locus. There are multiple modifier genes which control how much tan pigment is actually expressed. So a tan pattern goat can have a coat ranging from pure white to deep red. Genetically, goats are diploid and have 60 chromosomes. So if we will talk about their reproduction, goats reach puberty between 3 and 15 months of age depending on breed and nutritional status. Many breeders prefer to postpone breeding until the doe have reached 70% of the adult weight, but this separation is rarely possible in extensively managed open-range herds. In temperature climate and among the Swiss breeds, the breeding season commences as the day length shortens and end in early spring in before. So successful breeding in these regions depends more on available forage than one day length. Does of any breed or region come into estrus, heat, every 21 days for 2 to 48 hours. A doe in heat typically flags. Her tail often stays near the buck. If one is present, becomes more vocal and may also show a decrease in appetite and milk production for the duration of the heat. Bucks of Swiss and northern breeds come into rut in the fall as with the does heat cycle. Bucks of equatorial breed may show seasonal and reduced fertility, but as with the does are capable of breeding at all times. Rut is characterized by a decrease in appetital and obsessive interest in does. So as well as heavy breathing, she may have a worried look, become restless, and display great affection for her keeper. The mother often eats the balanced, which gives her much needed nutrients, helps stance her bleeding, and parallels the behavior of wild herbivorous such as deer to reduce the lure of the birth. So if we will talk about the milk production is also relatively common in unbreed dwellings of dairy breeds. Milk production varies with the breed, age, quality, and diet of the doe. Dairy goats generally produce between 680 and 1810 kg of milk per 305-day lactation. On average, a good quality dairy doe will give at least 3 kg of milk per day. यानी जो अच्छी बेहतरीन एक मदर होती है यानी बकरी होती है वो 3 kg पर डे मिल्क देती है हेल्दी. फर्स्ट टाइम मिल्कर में प्रोड्यूस लेस, शुरू में शायद वो कम दे लेकिन बाद में उसका ज़्यादा होता है. गोट्स आर reputed to be willing to eat almost anything including tin cans and cardboard boxes, while goats will not actually eat edible material. Goats are reputed to be willing to eat almost anything, including tin cans and cardboard boxes, while goats will not actually eat inedible material. They are browsing animals, not grazers like cattle and sheep, and coupled with their highly curious nature, will chew on and taste just about anything remotely resembling plant matter to decide whether it is good to eat, including cardboard, clothing, and paper such as label from tin cans. Aside from sampling many things, goats are quite particular in what they actually consume, preferring to browse on the tips of woody shrubs and trees as well as the occasional broad-leaved plant. However, it can fairly be said that their plant diet is extremely varied and includes some species which are otherwise toxic. They will seldom consume soiled food or contaminated water unless facing starvation. This is one of reason goat rearing is most often free-ranging, since stall-fed goat rearing involves extensive upkeep and is seldom commercially viable. The digestive physiology of a very young kid, like the young of other ruminants, is essentially the same as that of a monogastric animal. Milk digestion begins in the abomasum, the milk having bypassed the rumen via closure of the reticulophageal groove during suckling. At birth, the rumen is undeveloped, but as the kid begins to consume solid feed, the rumen soon increases in size and in its capacity to absorb nutrients. The adult size of a particular goat is a product of its breed, genetic potential, and its diet, while growing nutritional potential. As with all livestock, increased proteins diets and sufficient calories during the pre-puberty period yield higher growth rates and larger eventual size that lower protein rates and limited calories. So if we will talk about the behavior, goats are naturally curious. They are also agile and well known for their ability to climb and balance in precarious places. This makes them the only ruminant to regularly climb trees due to their agility, and They are notorious for escaping their pens by testing fences and enclosures, either intentionally or simply because they are used to climbing. If any of the fencing can be overcome, goats will almost inevitably escape. Goats have been found to be as intelligent as dogs by some studies. When handled as a group, goats tend to display less herding behavior than sheep. When grazing undisturbed, they tend to spread across the field or range rather than feed side by side as do sheep. When nursing, young goats will leave their kids separated, playing out rather than clumped as do sheep. They will generally turn and face an intruder, and bucks are more likely to charge or butt at humans than at rams. While goats are generally considered hardy animals and in many situations receive little Medicare, they are subject to a disease and number of diseases. Among the conditions affecting goats are respiratory diseases including pneumonia, foot rot, internal parasites, pregnancy toxicosis, and feed toxicity. Feed toxicity can vary based on breed and location. Certain foreign fruits and vegetables can be toxic to different breeds of goats. Goats can become infected with various viral and bacterial diseases such as foot and mouth disease, Caprinae arthritis, and Casos hypofadenitis, Pinkiae, mastitis, and so many. They can transmit a number of zoonotic diseases to people such as tuberculosis, brucellosis, Q fever, and rabies. If we will talk about the life span of a goat, life expectancy for goats is between 15 to 18 years. An instance of a goat reaching the age of 24 has been reported. Several factors can reduce this average expectancy. Problems during kidding can lower a doe expected lifespan to 10 or 11, and stresses of going into run can lower a buck's expected lifespan to 8 to 10 years. A goat is useful to human when it is living and when it is dead. First as a renewable provider of milk and fiber, and then as meat, and some charities provides goats to impoverished people in poor countries. Because goats are easier and cheaper to manage than cattle and have multiple uses. In addition, goats are used for driving and packing purposes. The intestine of goats is used to make catgut, which is still in use as a material for internal human surgical, and strings for musical instruments. Horns of the goat, which signifies plenty and well-being, is also used to make spoons. So if we will talk about their population, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, the top producers of goat milk were India, which was 4 million metric tons, Bangladesh 2.16 million metric tons, and the Sudan 1.47 million metric tons. India slaughters 41% of 124 million goats each other, and 0.6 million metric tons of goat meat make up 8% of India's annual meat production. Approximately 440 million goats are slaughtered each year for meat worldwide. In some parts of the world, especially Europe and North America, distinct breeds of goats are kept for dairy, milk, and for meat production. Excess male kids of dairy breeds are typically slaughtered for meat. Both does and bucks of meat breeds may be slaughtered for meat as well as older animals of any breed. The meat of older bucks more than 1 year old is generally considered not desirable for meat for human consumption. Castration at a young age prevents the development of typical buck odor. Dairy goats are generally pastures in summer and may be stable during the winter. As dairy does or milk dairy, they are generally kept close to the milking shed. So meat goats are more frequently pastured year-round and may be kept many miles from barns. So in Africa and the Middle East, goats are typically run in flocks with sheep. This maximizes the production per acre as goats and sheep prefer different food plots. Multiple types of goat raising are found in Ethiopia, where 4 main types have been identified pastures in annual crop systems. So, pet goats may be found in many parts of the world when a family keeps one or more animals for emotional reasons rather than as production animals. It is becoming more common for goats to be kept exclusively as pet in North America. The taste of goat kid meat is similarly to that of spring lamb meat. In fact, in the English-speaking island of Caribbean and in some parts of Asia, particularly Bangladesh, Pakistan and India, the word mutton is used to describe both goat and sheep meat. However, some compare the taste of goat meat to veal or venison, depending on the age and condition of the goat. Its flavor is said to be primarily linked to the presence of 4-methyloctanoic and 4-methyl-nonanoic acid. It can be prepared in a variety of ways, including strilling, baking, grilling, barbecuing, canning, and frying. It can be minced, curried, or made into sausage. Due to its low fat content, the meat can toughen at high temperatures if cooked without additional moisture. One of the most popular goats grown for meat in the South African Boer introduced into United States in the early 1990s. The New Zealand Kiko is also considered a meat breed, as is the Myotonic or fainting goat, a breed originating in Tennessee. Milk, butter, and cheese. Goats produce about 2% of the world's total annual milk supply. Some goats are bred specially milk if the strong-smelling buck is not separated from the does, his scent will affect the milk. Goat milk naturally has small, fat globes, which means the cream remains suspended in the milk instead of rising to the top as in raw cow milk. Therefore, it does not need to be homogenized. Indeed, if the milk is to be used for cheese and to be used for homogenization is not recommended. So, dairy goats in their prime generally around the 3rd and 4th location cycle. So, producing more just after threshing and gradually dropping in production towards the end of their lactation. The milk generally averages 3.5% butterfat. Goat milk is commonly processed into cheese, butter, ice cream, yogurt, and other products. Goat cheese is known as fromage de chèvre, goat cheese in France. Some varieties include Montrachet. Goat butter is white because goats produce milk and the yellow beta carotene converted to a colorless form of vitamin A. Goat milk has less cholesterol than cow's milk. So in cow milk composition, if we talk about 100 grams milk composition of cow milk, goat milk, if we will talk about goat milk, then the 88.9% water and 3.1 protein, 3.5 fat, 4.4 carbohydrates, and 60 energy, and sugar is 4.4, cholesterol is 10, calcium 100, saturated fatty acid 2.3, and monounsaturated fatty acids 0.8. So there is fiber also. The Angora breed of goats produce long, curling, lustrous lock of mohair. The entire body of the goat is covered with mohair and there are no guard hairs. In South Asia, Kashmir is called Pashmina, from Persian Pashmina. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, Kashmir, then called Kashmir by the British, had a thriving industry producing shawls from goat hair imported from Tibet and Ladakh. Through Ladakh, the shawls were introduced into Western Europe when Napoleon Bonaparte, the general-in-chief of the French campaign in Egypt, sent one to Paris. Since these shawls were produced in the Upper Kashmir and Ladakh region, the wool came to be known as Kashmir. So, goats have been used by humans to clear unwanted vegetation for centuries. They have been described as eating machines and biological control agents. There has been a resurgence of this in North America since 1990. So, if we will talk about pet as a goat, some people choose goats as a pet because of their ability to form close bonds with their human guardians. Goats are social animals and usually prefer the company of other goats, but because of their herd mentality, they will follow their owner and form close bonds with them, hence their continuing popularity. Goats are similar to deer with regard to nutrition and need a wide range of food, including things like hay, grain feed, to pelleted grain mix and loose minerals. Goats generally either inherit certain feeding preferences or learn them after birth. So goats breeds fall into overlapping general categories. They are generally distributed in those used for dairy, fiber, meat, skin, and as companion animals. Some breeds are also particularly noted as pack goats.